Imagine for a moment that we are drifting silently across a mirror-like expanse of dark, ink-colored water, enveloped by a heavy twilight sky. The only sound is the rhythmic dip and pull of oars, a low, hypnotic pulse that measures out the distance between the world we know and the one that waits ahead. We draw closer, and details emerge from the shadows. Before us, a desolate rocky islet rises abruptly from the depths. Its steep yellow cliffs forming a jagged fortress around a dense central grove of towering cypress trees that pierce the brooding sky like dark sentinels. Their forms rigid and eternal, symbols of mourning in ancient lore. At the island's edge, white classical tombs are tiered like forgotten dreams, their marble facades gleaming faintly against the gloom. In the sepulchral rowboat, gliding forward, two figures command the scene. A tall, slender silhouette stands motionless in the bow, cloaked entirely in flowing white robes, arms folded in serene composure. A soul, or the deceased themselves, facing a limestone watergate carved into the living rock, poised on their final journey to eternity. Behind, in the stern, a smaller shadowy rower punches intently over the oars. This is Charon, the grim ferryman of Greek myth, who demands an obol coin to cross souls over the river Styx. Here, the artist reimagines him as a spectral guide, silent and tireless, propelling the craft through the still waters with mechanical precision. Just beside these ghost-like travelers rests a coffin, stark white and garlanded, like sacred cargo bound for the rocky necropolis. Notice how the light and shadow play across the rocks and water, heightening the melancholic, dreamlike atmosphere. The towering cypresses, ancient symbols of mourning and the underworld, frame the narrow entrance, while the small, silent craft makes its inevitable journey. The water laps gently, unnaturally still, reflecting a hazy orange glow from a hidden sun, while mist veils the horizon. In this profound stillness, we feel the melancholic hush, the dreamlike suspension between life and eternity, a funerary rite frozen in time. This is Arnold Böcklin's Isle of the Dead, a masterpiece of 19th century symbolism that captured the collective imagination of a generation and remains one of the most eerily enduring works in the Western canon. Yet this is no literal place. It's an imagined threshold, a soul's passage to the afterlife, evoking memory, loss, and the inner landscape of the spirit. Böcklin described it as a dream picture, intended to produce a stillness so profound that one would be awed by a knock on the door. The origins of this haunting scene are deeply personal. Böcklin, born in 1827 amid Switzerland's romantic Alps, was familiar with myth and the uncanny. A wanderer through Italy and Greece, he steeped his art in fantasy, blending classical grandeur with spiritual unease. While working in his Florence studio in 1880, Böcklin was visited by Maria Berna, a young widow who was struck by an unfinished canvas on his easel. She requested a picture for dreaming, but asked him to add the coffin and the white shrouded figure as a memorial to her late husband. Böcklin was no stranger to such grief. His life was marked by the tragic loss of 8 of his 14 children. The weight of sorrow that deeply informed his artistic preoccupation with mortality. Isle of the Dead evokes, in part, the English cemetery in Florence, an oval, tree-shaded sanctuary located at Piazzale Donatello, where Böcklin's own infant daughter lay buried. The cemetery stood as a quiet island of stone and greenery amidst the noise of the modern city. Another model for the rocky islet was perhaps Ponte Conisi, a small, lush island near Corfu, which is adorned with a small chapel amid a cypress grove, perhaps in combination with the mysterious rocky island of Strombolicchio, near the famous volcano Stromboli, Sicily. Böcklin also drew inspiration from stark spots like Ponza's Cemetery Isle off Italy's coast, Sicily's jagged promontories, and the Bay of Naples' ghostly silhouettes. Whether representing the final passage to the afterlife, a personal vision of loss, or a dreamlike state, the painting's power lies in its profound ambiguity. It is this deep, almost magnetic pull of the unknown, this beautifully unsettling atmosphere, that has ensured the painting's place in collective memory. Over the next 6 years, Böcklin would paint 5 distinct versions of this scene, each shifting slightly in its atmospheric pressure, composition, light, and color, but all retained that core, haunting resonance. The first versions, found today in Basel and New York, have a softer, more romantic light. But as we move toward the later iterations, such as the 1883 Berlin version, or the final 1886 Leipzig work, the mood darkens. The cliffs grow more formidable, the sky becomes storm-laden, and the sense of isolation becomes absolute. Ironically, the artist never even gave the work its famous title. It was his dealer, Fritz Gurlitt, who conferred the name Isle of the Dead to better market the haunting image. Each version of the painting eventually found its way into different hands. The first version was acquired by the Gottfried Keller Foundation in 1920. It graces Basel's Kunstmuseum today. The second version is now in the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City. The third version, owned by Adolf Hitler, survived a 1945 bombing in Berlin. It is now at the Alte Nationalgalerie, Berlin. Tragically, the fourth version was destroyed by Allied bombing during World War II, surviving now only as a haunting black and white photograph. The fifth version was commissioned in 1886 by the Museum of Fine Arts, Leipzig, where it still hangs. The sixth version, allegedly created in 1901 with the help of Böcklin's son, Carlo, can be found at the State Hermitage in Saint Petersburg. The painting's impact was staggering. By the early 20th century, it had become a cultural icon so ubiquitous that the writer Vladimir Nabokov famously remarked it could be found in every middle-class home in Berlin. It spoke to a wide range of minds. Sigmund Freud kept a reproduction in his office, perhaps seeing it as a mirror for the subconscious. It also drew the attention of darker figures. Vladimir Lenin reportedly kept a copy above his bed in Zurich, while Adolf Hitler eventually purchased the 1883 original for himself, hanging it in the Reich Chancellery, where it served as a backdrop for the signing of the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. The silent power of the island eventually broke into the world of sound. The composer Sergei Rachmaninoff was so moved by a black and white reproduction that he composed a massive symphonic poem to capture its aura, using a swaying 5/8 time signature to mimic the heaving of the water and the heavy breathing of the oarsmen. Artists from the Symbolist movement, and later the Surrealists, were equally captivated, seeing in Böcklin's work a powerful conduit to the subconscious and the dream. Salvador Dalí would later deconstruct the island in his own bizarre, dreamlike reinterpretations. Giorgio de Chirico nodded to its metaphysical void. And H.R. Giger would reimagine it as a biomechanical necropolis. From the atmospheric mastery of Jacques Tourneur and Mark Robson to the visionaries of modern horror, filmmakers have long invoked its silhouette to shroud their scenes in clinging dread. Its familiar outline lingers in the velvet gloom of Val Lewton's Gothic nightmares and stretches across the desolate, otherworldly expanses of Ridley Scott's imagination. Even Hayao Miyazaki, a contemporary master of animated storytelling, has drawn upon this haunting visual archetype to shape the spectral landscapes of The Boy and the Heron. Echoes of its composition and mood have rippled through cinema, literature, and popular culture for over a century. Album covers, novels, even tattoos bear its mark, proof of its grip on our collective subconscious. As we gaze upon Isle of the Dead, perhaps we are drawn less to a physical location than to an eternal silent place within ourselves, a reflection on memory, loss, or the ultimate, mysterious journey we all must take. The boat continues its silent row, the cypress trees stand guard, and the island remains forever shrouded in twilight. We do not know what awaits the figure once they step onto that silent shore, and perhaps that is why the painting lingers so long in our minds. It invites us to pause at the threshold, where life meets shadow, and listen to the stillness that Arnold Böcklin so carefully preserved for us. After all, in the face of such a mystery, what words could we possibly speak that wouldn't feel like a disruption?